So welcome, people, everybody. I am Anna, and Grant is with me on the call.
Hey, everyone.
I'm just going to quick intro myself and let Grant intro himself, and then we will get going. So I am a freelance content marketer and journalist, and I also create resources for fellow solopreneurs, basically helping them figure out how to promote themselves online as well as do some back-end operations type stuff for their clients. So I will pass it over to Grant, let you intro yourself.
Yeah. And I'm Grant. I run a podcast production agency called Authentic Marketing. And essentially our goal is just to make it super easy and convenient for experts and entrepreneurs to produce video content. A lot of our clients already have a podcast and we'll just help them streamline it. We also have this service, which I'll briefly touch on, called conversational content, where we'll interview clients for 45 minutes on a platform like Riverside, and take out clips from that interview for them to post on social media. And what's funny is Frank, who's in the audience right now, is one of the reasons why about 4 years ago I just decided to get into podcasting, because Frank did a talk about podcast repurposing at this networking event in Boston, and that was a big encouragement to get in the industry. So thank you, Frank.
That's awesome. Well, Grant and I connected a couple of months ago now in a different webinar, and ended up having a conversation about kind of the role of video and the rise of video. So we thought we could kind of combine our different areas of expertise to do this webinar today. So kind of real quickly to give some background why we're talking about this topic in particular. We both, when we had this conversation with the two of us, we realized that AI content has created a lot of noise, and specifically written content. It's so easy now for people to generate content maybe they weren't before. And so there's kind of this noise out on the internet. We were trying to think about, well, how do you stand out from that? And what we came to when we had this conversation is video is a really unique way to get ideas into the world. It's not replicated. It's you talking about your expertise or what you're passionate about or anything. And it's a way to capture people's attention. And social media platforms in particular are really pushing video. Yeah, even like LinkedIn, where I frequent, is pushing its video feed. But recording video is new for a lot of people. So it might make them uncomfortable. They're not sure the best way to do it. They're not sure the best tools to use. They're not sure how to do editing. And it's kind of a different process. It really is unique from just sitting down and typing out a text-based post or something like that. So you kind of have to think about, how does that fit into what you're currently doing? So in this webinar, what we're going to talk about is Grant is going to talk about some best practices for recording video and how to get past that fear of being on camera. I've done some video myself, and it's still kind of like a learning process for me. It doesn't come naturally to me, and I think it doesn't come naturally to a lot of people until you've done it a lot. So that's kind of some of the things that we want to talk about, helping you get more comfortable with video. And then I'm going to talk about creating some automated systems in the background. I'm going to give some really simple examples of things that you can do to manage your video production and kind of get it out into the world. And then also how to get more mileage out of your video by then taking it and turning it into something like a blog, if it's something really long, like a webinar, or a social post. And then at the end, we're going to have a Q&A. So if you have any questions for us, please feel free to drop them in the chat while we're talking. We'll kind of monitor as each other are talking, and then we'll pick those up at the end. So I am going to stop sharing so that Grant can share. And we'll kind of go from there.
Okay, let's see. All right, can everyone see my screen? Hopefully they can.
Yes, we can. Yes.
Well, let's get started. So I started out with this slide. Essentially, if you don't create video content, you still exist. There's a lot of pressure now as an entrepreneur, founder, or marketer to create content, and specifically video content. You can almost feel like irrelevant if you're not doing it. But trust me, you exist in the real world just as much as anyone who is already currently creating video content. And I think you just have to really look at video content as a tool. You have to have a reason to do it. You really don't have to do it, but that doesn't mean maybe you shouldn't. So we'll talk about, one of the things that is kind of a big picture concept here is that if you're trying to sell a product or services, the way you make someone feel has a huge part in them wanting to do business with you. And that is what's so unique about video content, is that video content helps people understand how you make them feel. So if someone watches your video and they feel understood, like you understand one of their problems, maybe you elicited to that in one of their videos, and then you provided a solution, that makes them feel good. Those are positive feelings. On the other hand, you could post a video where you make someone feel lazy, like they're not doing enough. And that person might not want to work with you, whatever services or product you're selling. You can make someone feel confident and empowered with the video content you share. You can share a story that makes them want to do something that they've been afraid to do. So I think what's so unique about video is that it really does create maybe an emotional reaction in your viewer that may encourage them to take an action, like maybe booking a call with you and learning more about your services. I think that's one of the things. You could do that with writing. You can do that with, photography. I think video, though, because it's your face, your voice, and your stories, it's just really unique. But the challenge here is that, as Anna mentioned earlier, recording video is really new and uncomfortable for a lot of people. It's just awkward, honestly. I still feel awkward all the time when I'm recording content, especially when other people are around and, they're observing me. But I want to kind of propose a simpler way of doing things. And I think the challenge with creating video content, as I mentioned earlier, is just we kind of get in our head and overthink things because there's so many steps to creating a video. First of all, you have to have an idea. You have to capture that idea. Then you have to script that idea sometimes. You've got to record it. And then there's the editing process, take out the mistakes, and then you ultimately have to post it. And there's so many steps in this process that make it to where you may never actually get a video to the finish line actually posted. So the solution to that I want to propose is something that I call conversational content. And this kind of gets us out of our own head, and encourages us to create content in a more free way. And the way this works is, the reason it's called conversational content is you just have a conversation with someone. You start with a long form piece of content and have someone like a peer or a business partner or a friend, a customer, interview you about your business, interview you about a topic, for instance. So you don't have to show up to this conversation with any ideas necessarily. The other person's actually responsible for that. They're going to come with just their curiosities and questions, and you just have a conversation. I think the reason why this is so important is because we often forget what we know and we forget about our expertise because it's so intuitive to us. It's so natural. So you need other people sometimes to rely on. You also need some automated systems and AI to rely on as well. And I think this whole conversation is about AI and automation. If you're curious about creating post topics and content ideas, or maybe the person that's going to interview you is having a tough time coming up with questions, you can have AI, ChatGPT, generate a list of 20 questions to ask yourself about your business, and kind of get you going in the right direction. Anna, should I stop here and answer any questions that you might have or the audience has so far?
I have one that I really struggle with, and that is, how do you get over feeling like you have to be perfect? You answer questions, and like what I just did, which was pause and think for a second. Like, what do you recommend to people to kind of either, does it get better over time, or do you just kind of say, be yourself, or what do you recommend to people?
So are you talking about kind of each piece of content? You feel like it needs to be maybe perfect and polished and
Yeah, like I'll do, something kind of like this, and I will,
Okay.
try to record like a little snippet and share something, and I'll record it 18 times
Yeah.
because of whatever,
Yeah.
because I didn't like the way that I looked, or, I didn't like the way I sounded. What do you suggest for that?
Well, first of all, you have to realize that like even in like big budget movies, I love watching the scenes. There's like this compilation where you can watch like a movie like Avatar, which costs them like $1 billion to produce. And there are scenes where they like accidentally have the microphone hanging down in the view. And it's like these productions are spending literally hundreds of millions of dollars on producing a movie, and they still have mistakes. And we're just posting social video that talks about one specific topic. Like, of course, there's going to be mistakes. It's never going to be perfect. So I think you almost have to intentionally post a video that isn't perfect just to kind of get yourself over that hump. But you also have to realize that like people are watching, but the person that always overanalyzes this stuff is ourselves. Like the viewer is not, if they're not interested, they're just going to swipe away, and watch another video, which I guess that is a problem because, then maybe your video isn't all that effective. But at the end of the day, you're not taking up as much, real estate in their head as you might imagine. So you got to give yourself a little grace, let yourself make those mistakes. And what I will say is with text content, with written content, there's a lot more editing that you can do. And with video content, you're not always going to respond with the perfect answer or have the perfect script. So, but the fact that it is video and your face and your voice are there, I think it's better at building trust. And to that point of building trust, like we're all human and we all make mistakes. And sometimes the little mistakes are actually the funny parts of our videos and the pieces that make us relatable. So
Yeah.
hopefully that was helpful. All right. I forgot to mention the reason when we record these long form conversations, the goal then is to take out short clips from the conversation. This is an example of what they might look like. And you maybe record for 30 or 45 minutes and you can pull out 6 or 7 1 minute, 1:30 clips that you can then post to social media. The platform that I like to use for this is called Riverside FM. It's the platform that we're recording on right now. And I'll record with multiple peers, have them interview me, and then I'll interview them. And we kind of like co-collaborate on content together. And honestly, if anyone in the chat here is like interested in doing something like that, where I interview them for 15 minutes and they interview me, I'd be happy to do that with some of the people in this webinar, just to kind of give you an experience and show you what it's like. From there, we could, send the files to each other from Riverside, and then you could do whatever you want with them. But Riverside,
there's a
sorry,
comment.
go ahead, Anna.
Yeah, there's a comment.
Okay.
Somebody said, I love Riverside. I use it for my podcast. And but that's why we're using it for this too. We love Riverside.
It's the best. Yeah. The reason Riverside is so great is it's kind of like Zoom, but it records the video file locally on your computer first and then uploads it to Riverside throughout. So if your Wi-Fi isn't great, the end quality of the recording is just way better. So it's become like the industry standard for remote podcast and remote video recording. It's super awesome. And they have a free version. I think the version that most people use is probably about $34 a month. So it's another thing to add to the bill sometimes. But all right. So I want to talk about some video setup basics. So the first is you don't have to go out and spend a ton of money on gear. You can if you want. I'm kind of a gearhead. I love this stuff. But the first thing that everyone has control of is decluttering their background. If your home office just has a big mess behind it, and you're in your living room, like that can be fine. Just try to keep your background not distracting, because you want to be the center of attention here. Another thing is the audio quality, I'd say, is more important than video quality, actually. So always start with a good microphone, which I'll share the one that I recommend on the next screen. And even before the camera, I would recommend lighting, because no matter what camera you have, I'm going to turn my light off right now. If you have bad lighting, your video just looks poor. I don't have any windows in my office. I kind of work out of a closet in my co-working space. So if I didn't have this light it would look really, really bad. So you can use natural light for this, but having control over your lighting, I've found to be very helpful. The camera I like to use is the Sony ZV-E10, which is like an $800 camera. But I'm going to suggest an alternative on the next slide if you don't want to spend that much. And then another thing to consider is just your placement on the screen. Try to keep your eyes about 2/3 the way up the screen, and consider that you're going to be repurposing this content. So if you're like slouched down here and you want to edit the video, there's not going to be a lot of room for subtitles or editing. So you want to kind of be conscious of how you're framed in the shot so that you actually can do something with the recording afterwards. In terms of my short list of recommendations, again, starting with audio, the Samsung Q2U is a $69 USB microphone that just plugs directly into USB. The thing to know about these USB microphones is that you need them close to your mouth in order for them to be effective. If I step away from the from the microphone, all of a sudden it gets very, very echoey. I'm hoping you all can hear that. But if you get very close, you start getting very good audio quality. The light I use is $140, the Godox ES45. It clamps onto your desk. And then what's nice is you have control over, with this remote, control over how intense the light is. I can turn it up, I can turn it down. I can adjust the hue depending on kind of your room setting and your skin tone. I find that really helpful. And then there is a webcam out there. Usually webcams are not all that great, but I found one that I like, the OBSBot Meet 2. It's $130. It's never going to be as good as the Sony, the DSLR cameras that have really good lenses that I like to use. But an alternative you could use is your phone. But the challenge I found with the phone is that you have to set it up every time, and that just adds friction to the process. So I recommend having a dedicated camera that goes with your laptop just to speed things up. Every hoop you have to jump through is a challenge. Once you've actually recorded on Riverside, you just download your piece of the conversation. Whoever interviewed you, you don't need their piece of the conversation. Just download your piece. And then we use a tool called Descript, which is like a game-changing video editor that's making editing way simpler for people that are beginners. And the highlight here to understand is, I bet a lot of people, I'm curious, has anyone in the chat, has anyone used Descript before? And if so, like, what's your experience been? Because for me, it's kind of been enlightening. But when you upload a video, it creates a transcript, and then you can highlight certain sections and take them out, or you could search for certain sections. So for instance, if I was talking about lighting, I could search for lighting, and it would take me to the section of the conversation where I'm talking about lighting. And it just saves a ton of time editing long form content. And I'm seeing, okay, Sue says that they love Descript. Elsa, have heard about it but not used it. Please test it out. Elsa, if you have any questions about it, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. And then Oaks is talking about Tela. I actually have not heard of that one. Maybe it's similar to Riverside. And Frank, I think you're the one that actually may have put Descript on my radar a while back. I'm not sure, but it's gotten a lot better since then. The cool thing about Descript is that they're starting to add these AI features. So I have this prompt here, and Anna, I think you'll probably talk more about this. But you can basically, it kind of has its own chat GPT built into the platform, and you can give it a prompt that says something like, hey, you're an experienced marketing copywriter. I want you to write a LinkedIn post, like a caption based off of this video. And it'll read the transcript, and then it'll kind of listen to what you're saying, and then make like a more refined post from it. All this down here is a few previous posts that I've written, and they just kind of inform ChatGPT on, how to sound more like Grant, which is really important. All right, so that's kind of the overview. We can do questions now, or Anna, if you want to jump into your section, we can do questions later. I'll leave it up to you.
Well, you made me rethink my backdrop.
No, okay. Your backdrop is great, actually. It's not. It says something about you, and it's organized. Yeah. I'm talking about if you have like dirty laundry, like in your background, or you have, you can tell you have 8 years of your tax filings right behind you. It just, I don't know. It's a little distracting. I think your background's great.
Okay, well, because I was like frantically thinking that I needed to like rearrange my office after listening to you.
No,
One
don't do it.
one tip I wanted to share that I do, because you mentioned the phone thing, and that was the biggest struggle for me for a long time, and like just popping off a short video. I have an old iPhone that I don't use anymore, so that like has a permanent place, like with a that I could use it to record separately and then just use AirDrop and send it
Smart.
over to
Is
my
that what you're
computer.
using right now?
No, I have a separate like webcam, but like if I'm just doing like a quick
Okay.
um it's hard to explain like how I use different cameras, but like, like maybe I just want to quick talk to the camera and actually like angle myself and look this way. And so I
My
have an
a
arm
little
over
bit.
here, and then the phone just sits there permanently for a little bit for that type of video. And then I can just quick record and send it over to myself. So anyway. All right. I don't see any questions yet in the chat for that portion, but we'll come back at the end. So if you think of anything, just drop it in there and we will keep an eye on it. But I'm going to talk now about one of the things that Grant said when he first started is there's a lot of steps in video production and editing. And, when I first started recording just short videos for myself, this was one of my biggest hangups, was it felt like I was moving files around from one place to another place, and there was just so many steps in the process. And some of it you can't avoid. It's just kind of the nature of video, but some you can speed up the process and make it better with tools and automation. So I'm going to share a couple of tips that I have for that. So let me just share the screen real quick again. All right. So if you're not familiar with automation, here's basically how it works. And I'll talk a little bit about the tools that I use and then give some very specific examples of ways that you can automate using video content. So with an automation tool, basically something has to happen. And we call that a trigger, like that something takes place and that kicks off something else. And so that's an action. And when I give you an example, this will make a little bit more sense. But the way that you have to think about this is, what is happening every time in my video process? And what's the next step? And how could that happen automatically rather than me doing that manually? And to make this happen, you're going to connect different separate apps. And I'll give examples of that as well. Automation tools, I'm sorry, it popped back. Automation tools, Zapier is one, probably the most common and popular one. There's also a tool called Make, and then a tool called If This Then That, or IFTTT, which is basically spelling out exactly what happens. If this happens, then this other thing will happen. So here's some examples of how you can use automation with video. Let's say you're not doing this entirely on your own. Let's say you're working with a virtual assistant. Maybe you're working with a video editor. Maybe you're just working with a friend, like Grant mentioned, and you want to be able to notify somebody else that the files are ready, that the video files. And rather than doing that manually, you want to automate that. I'll give an example of somebody that I worked with who had a podcast. She had a virtual assistant who would prepare social posts, and she had a video editor. So she would record, and she needed to notify both of those people that the files were ready. That was a manual process. She was notifying her VA in Slack, and she was sending an email to her video editor. That is something that can be automated. So you're not manually taking the time letting other people know that files are available. Adding a video to a project management tool. So I do this even just as myself, like just one person. Once I record a video, I kind of need to add it into my project plan so that so that it gets scheduled on social media so I don't forget about it and it just sits in my downloads folder. And so I have a process for that. Or if you are doing a podcast, that the final video actually gets itself into a project management tool so you can move it through different stages, like editing, like adding captions, like pushing it out to different channels. Another one, and then click too fast, so they both popped up at the same time, but another one is taking the transcript and turning it into a blog post. So Grant shared a really great suggestion of, some interviewing with somebody and talking about a lot of different aspects of your business and then getting clips out of that. Another additional thing you could do is take the transcript of that conversation and turn it into a full-fledged blog post talking about, a specific topic or sharing your knowledge, especially if you're answering multiple questions on a similar theme. And then finally, oh my gosh, I'm click happy today. The last one is turning the transcripts into a social post. So you record a video, a 1-minute video for LinkedIn, Instagram, something like that. We talk at about a rate of 100 words per minute. So when you create a 1-minute video, you've got about 100 words, which is a pretty good sized text-based post. And why let that content live only one life, as I like to say? You can go ahead and turn that into a social post. So what does that look like in real life or kind of mocked up real life? So for example, this is what it looks like in Zapier. You connect different apps. And so I'm just going to kind of talk through what is happening. And you have to kind of be familiar with how Zapier works, but I'll explain that here. In this example, Dropbox is my trigger. So I connected Dropbox and I said, if there is a new file in a specific folder in Dropbox, I want to send an email to my video editor, and I want to send a Slack message to my VA that says, go do these things. And you get to configure all of this. You tell it exactly what folder to look at in Dropbox. You look at, you can have the text of your Gmail, of your email, and it could include a link to the Dropbox so that somebody just clicks right on it and gets over into your files. And then you can configure Slack, like what channel does it go to? Does it tag anybody? And so that's just an example of, hey, you don't need to do all these steps manually. You can set this type of automation up and save yourself some of the time. And,
Can I ask a question, Anna?
You could, yeah, or you may forget. That's the other thing I'll mention too, is automation prevents you from forgetting a step in the process. But go ahead.
Do you know if we can use a trigger from Riverside once the Riverside recording is recorded, then have that trigger? Does it have to start with Dropbox?
I don't think Riverside itself. It's got to be some kind of storage thing.
Okay.
Google
I can't
Drive.
wait. They will hopefully figure that out, but
yeah,
I don't think they have it yet.
Yeah, Google Drive is another one that I know you can trigger from, and I actually have another example from that. I don't think that Riverside itself does. I'm not aware of any video platform that does, but I could be wrong about that. All right.
I hope they figure that out soon.
I know. It's really a bummer. But anyway, next one is adding to a project management tool. So same type of trigger, new file in a folder, whether it's Dropbox, whether it's Google Drive, whether you might use something else, but new file in a folder that it adds to a project management tool. I happen to use Trello. You might use Asana. You might use ClickUp. You might use, there's so many project management tools out there. So the tool itself isn't the important part here. It's basically putting it into that tool. So in my case, when I am done recording a video and put it in a specific Dropbox folder, it kicks off in Trello and adds it to a list that says ready for editing. And from there, then I know, okay, these are the steps that I need to follow to get this actually out into the world. Another example, turning a transcript into a blog post. So this one, for me, this comes from Google Drive because that is where I store the actual transcript. from any type of long form content that I do. This webinar being a perfect example. So I also do a lot of podcasts where I'm the guest, but it might actually work if you're a podcast. It would work if you're a host as well. So I upload the transcript to a specific folder on my Google Drive. Then in Zapier, I call ChatGPT and I have some instructions that say, look only at my half of the conversation. So because I'm writing this for myself and my blog, it's not about what the other person said, it's about what I said. And with the example that Grant gave of, hey, I'm going to have somebody interview me, you'd want to do the same thing. You'd want to say, only look at my half of the conversation or the person's half so that it's not intermingling like two different things. And then you can send it to an output of your choice. You could send it to Google Docs. If you use Notion to draft things, you could send it there. But from ChatGPT, I am saying, look at this transcript, clean it up. You could try to say, write the blog post. I usually have it be a little bit more like outline format with kind of some meatier bullet points. That's just what I prefer. But you could actually have it do almost your entire conversation and clean it up that way. It just depends on what works better for you. And then from there, you can go into that output and start editing, start writing, turn that into a blog post. When I do this, it is substantially faster than writing a blog post from scratch because the ideas are already there. They're already organized. It even has like headers for my different sections of my blog. I'm just kind of filling in to the details of that. Another one that I really like is creating text-based social posts. So like I mentioned, you might create a 1-minute video, use clips like Grant mentioned. And I didn't want to show the whole thing because it's actually more elaborate than this. I have a whole separate process that automates creating a transcript from my 1-minute video, and then it puts it into a specific folder on my Google Drive. So that is actually happening separately. You could also manually upload the transcript as well. Basically, the transcript for my 1-minute video is added to my Google Drive. It goes through ChatGPT. It does very light cleanup. Because in this case, it's just me. It's not, a conversation with somebody else. But I say, remove the timestamp, obviously. Remove kind of the filler, if there are any filler words. I have some examples of other posts that I've written, so I kind of format this. And then I go ahead and send it directly to Buffer, which is what I use for social media scheduling. You could use this, if you're using Hootsuite or Planful, or there's a ton of social media scheduling tools out there. I send it directly there. It's not ready to go out, but I put it in there as a draft. That way I can go in. This type of editing is usually super light. I already edited the video when I published it. So now it's just kind of tweaking that text and getting it ready to go out. But otherwise, if I weren't doing this would be a manual process of, listening to my video or taking the transcript and editing it myself. I'm having ChatGPT do that for me. Do the cleanup, go ahead and throw it in my social media scheduling tool, and it's ready to go from there. So that's my spiel, is that all of these things just save time throughout your video process. They make it more streamlined and they help you get more mileage out of that video because you're taking time to record and share your ideas. There's no reason to only use that video once. You should use it more than once, whether you're creating something long form, whether you're creating a social post, and automation and AI can help you with it. And if you're not comfortable with this type of setup that I have here, you've never worked with Zapier, you're not familiar with it, you could take a transcript and just paste it in ChatGPT. That is absolutely something you could do. You could save a prompt and still get the benefits of it without necessarily the automated process in the background. So, Any questions about that?
I just wanted to say something real quick, Anna, as questions come in. Like, I think the cool part about this process is, like, I think everyone's biggest complaint about ChatGPT is like, it's just generic content. It doesn't sound like me. And if you just go to ChatGPT and just say, hey, write me a blog post about content marketing and AI, it's going to give you the same result that everyone else is getting. But when you're feeding it with an entire conversation or transcript of you speaking, it is, even though you're using AI to like leveraging AI, it's still your ideas, your thoughts. AI is just kind of restructuring it. So I feel like this is a flow that is going to become really popular. Most people just aren't utilizing it yet. So
Yeah.
also I wanted to ask you, have you experimented with the new ChatGPT 01 preview version?
No,
Do you use,
sure I have.
there's a new one every month. So it's like
I've lost
kind
track.
of, but yeah, I think they just launched this one like 3 weeks ago or something like that. And we use a similar process in our video editing service and to create post captions for social media. And ChatGPT 01 preview is like 2 times better than any other model we've used in the past, because it thinks for a little bit longer.
Oh, I have you. Yes, I have used that one. Now
Okay.
that you said that, I'm like, yes, I did watch it because you sat there and it's like ChatGPT is thinking, and then before
Yeah, thinking. It's like, it's really good. If you feed it the right stuff, it gives you great results. So,
and that was honestly, that was a big hang up for me for a long time with using AI, because I would try things like, oh, I'm this person and these are the topics
yeah.
I talk about. Give me 10 LinkedIn posts. They weren't good and they needed so much editing to even sound. And so it didn't feel like it saved any time. And it didn't sound anything like me or anything I would talk about. That is the difference between doing that and doing this. Is like you said, you're starting with your ideas and your unique perspective. And now you're just you've already done the hard work. The hard work was the video part. You've already done that hard work. Now you can use AI and automation, if you're comfortable with it, to make that work go even further for you. And like you said, ChatGPT is a lot better when you're feeding it your ideas and giving it a good prompt with what you want the output to be.
It's like a filter. It's like a funnel. It's for your thoughts. It's really cool. I'm not seeing, let's see, any new questions pop in the chat. But another thing that I was thinking about is, I'm someone who likes to use voice notes on my phone, and I've been taking voice notes for like years now whenever I have an idea about content. And I could retroactively go in and go back years from now and, pull up ideas that I talked about and run them through a similar process where I transcribe the voice note in Descript and then upload the transcript to ChatGPT and just say, hey, reorganize this into a social post, essentially. But I'm curious, I bet there's a lot of people who are listening right now who might already have some type of content that they've recorded in the past that they could leverage for this. Like maybe it's a webinar, maybe it's voice notes, maybe it's previous YouTube videos that they've posted, but there's probably something sitting in your bank that you could leverage right now.
So what I do for that is I use an app called Fireflies, which which is also used for like meeting recordings. Like it'll auto join a meeting and it'll record meeting for you, which I need for interviewing people in the work and stuff I do. But I have the app on my phone. So similar to how you use voice notes, I will just record a quick thought to myself. Fireflies will automatically drop it on my Google Drive. And then it kicks off this process. So rather than just it kind of being stuck in the app itself, I already have Firefly set up that anything that it records, it puts a copy of the transcript on my Google Drive. So that way it can go ahead and have the conversation with ChatGPT, add it to whatever. I've got a lot of different workflows here. So I'm doing kind of the same thing. It's that. And then another one I have set up is actually through Siri. I've got an automation set up that I can say, hey, Siri. Oh, I shouldn't say it too loud or she'll actually react to me. Like that's sort of having your phone with you while you're doing it, or somebody else's Siri will go off. Say, hey, new idea. And then
Okay.
I just say like, hey, quick idea. And then it will drop that into my project management tool for me. So that's just another way. It's like it's not even an idea. It's like, hey, I want to write something about this topic. That's all I've got. I got nothing else. And I've got another automation set up to drop that into my project management tool so I don't forget about it.
I think the problem with me is I have way too many ideas at this point.
Yeah.
And saved because I've been saving them. I don't think I come up with any more ideas than the average person, but like I'm always saving them. So that's a process I've gotten good at. But the process that you were talking about earlier about automatically scheduling the buffer as a draft, or it's like, hey, if this is good, I can get it scheduled really quickly. I think that is one of the most important pieces of this process, because if you don't make it easy for you to actually post that content, then that content's just going to sit in the bank and not collect any interest. It'll just sit there. But when you include the buffer step, I feel like that is such a key component. And you can really only build that if you actually are building these automations. Otherwise, you're going to rely on someone else, like a human, to delegate to add to buffer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you find that people like have like kind of a bank of video that they just kind of sit on and don't do anything with just because they get stuck somewhere in the process?
Yeah. A lot of people, for various reasons, but I mean, definitely webinars. Companies are collecting webinars. I also talked to a guy the other day who is writing a book, and the way he's doing it is he'll record like 5-minute stories on video and then share them with their ghostwriter. And I actually think you probably could write an entire book with that process, leveraging AI, where you just, as ideas come up for the book, you record them, transcribe them, whether it's on video or voice note. And then your ghostwriter kind of is ChatGPT, because it's your original thought and your ideas. ChatGPT just kind of can organize everything into a more like digestible piece. But that's kind of a genius way I've heard people use it. But I don't know, if you don't have a bank of content, like, it's never too late to start. And especially those ideas, having a pen and paper next to your bed or having a voice recorder that's convenient at your desk is like, you're going to appreciate having that in the future.
Yeah, Sue commented, I have tons of video content, great messaging here to learn what to do with it.
Cool.
And I think that is a hang up for a lot of people and I hope that that's the message, is it's so important to do it, and it's so important to do a lot with it. Don't just do only one thing, do a lot of things. Your example of a webinar was a really good one, because I see that a lot with companies I work for as well. They'll host things exactly like this, and maybe they get some clips out of it, but that's the end. And it could do so much more than just like one thing, which is like, post it to their YouTube channel and then that's the end of it. There's so many other things that they could do with the clips, with, key ideas from it, all kinds of things.
For sure. Why do you think they're not doing anything with it? Is it they just don't know what to do, or they just don't have the systems, or they're not they don't have someone on the team who like is just willing to take it on?
I think it's I think it's a lack of knowing what the next thing to do with it is. So it's like a process or a system thing, because you almost have to think like, okay, I've got this video and somebody knows to go post that video on YouTube, right? And somebody knows to like share a link with that or send it out in their newsletter. Like, those are kind of the obvious things, but you have to kind of know like these are like the next 5 steps to take, and maybe they're not immediate, and then I think it gets lost kind of in the content calendar. Like, oh, we shouldn't just share it once, we should share it again 4 weeks from now and share another clip and remind people about this until there's so much push to push it out immediately and not to kind of drip it out over time.
That makes me think that when you're scheduling the buffer, you should almost ask it to schedule 2 posts for you of the same thing. And then automatically it's like, all right, we're going to post this next week, but I'm also going to post it 5 weeks from now. I guess you could just duplicate that post.
You can, yeah.
But having that extra one already built in would be nice.
Like in the one I have set up, you could easily do that. You could just have it do 2. You could just, in my step where I said, write this, you could have it say, create 2 of them and have them be a little bit different. The other thing I do is I actually send it to multiple channels. I can send it to LinkedIn and Threads, and I can change the tone for each of them so that you're not doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, it's cool stuff. You could go down so many different rabbit holes with it, and but once it's set up, really, you just feel like grateful to have it.
Do you find that people that you record video with, are they posting to multiple channels, or are they kind of focused on one?
They mostly have a core platform, like usually LinkedIn. But with a platform like Buffer, it's not that much harder to post to another social, but I find most of them are focused on one, trying to get it right and do it well.
Yeah, I share videos to more than one, but Instagram is kind of a mystery to me. Like I just don't spend a lot of time there. So what works well there is less obvious to me than people who spend like most of their time there.
Yeah, if you try to boil the ocean with it, it's not worth it. There's so many platforms out there, and there's more every day. So I think AI and automation can help get you on multiple platforms, but if you don't have like a social media manager, even with AI and automation, I think you still need like a social media manager that's dedicated to cross posting, because it is so contextual and different cultures on different platforms. So there's still a human component to this 100%. It's just that if you have a human and AI, you can do 3 times more than what just a human could do, maybe 5 times more. I don't know.
Yeah. So as we wrap this up, if you want to get in touch with Grant or myself, we have websites there, and we'll send out a follow-up email as well, so make sure that you all know where to find us if you want to. We're both on LinkedIn, so you can come and hang out with us there as well. I always like to connect with people in DMs or things like that, so please come find us and chat more about video or automation or AI or whatever is on your mind.
I'm going to share a link to my meeting calendar, my TidyCal, in the chat if anyone wants to grab 20 minutes to chat further about any of these topics. So feel free to grab some time.
You made me wonder if I could like rope my husband into like doing an interview with me. Like the idea, like,
oh yeah, 100%.
Especially if I gave him interview questions, it's just like, I just need you to ask these. Because I like
Don't
that.
give him interview. Well, I guess you could give him interview questions, but I'd be curious to hear what he would ask you just off the spur of the moment,
Well, that's an interesting experiment as well, because I do record like just videos of myself. I'll usually, go based on like a blog post or something I wrote recently, but I like the interview idea so much, I'll let you know how that experiment goes.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing too is like if you had like a grandparent or an uncle interview you, they're going to ask you totally different questions than someone who's in your career would, or someone in your... So like, what, automation?
I'll have my high schooler do it. We'll see what happens.
That'd be awesome.
Yep. So come find us. We're happy to chat more. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone.